In an era of technological advancement and global connectivity, it is super easy to overlook the inherent fragility of our modern civilization. Yet beneath the surface lies a precarious balance that can be disrupted by a single catastrophic event, leading to dire consequences for humanity. Government agencies have long warned of the potential devastation that could result from such events, with predictions suggesting that up to 90% of the population could perish within just 1 year. Could we really lose 90% of the population that fast? The sad answer is yes, we could, with very little work on the part of the evil people who decide to sabotage our world. Let's take a look at the reasons behind these ominous predictions. How easy would it be to cause an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, that cripples our power grid? Or sabotage our entire power grid by attacking just 9 strategic spots? The modern world relies heavily on electricity to power virtually every aspect of daily life. From communication and transportation to healthcare and food production, electricity is the lifeblood of our society. However, this reliance also makes us vulnerable to disruptions in the power grid, which could have catastrophic consequences. Government documents warn that a coordinated attack on just 9 strategic points in our power grid could result in a complete collapse of the electrical infrastructure, plunging our entire country into darkness for an extended period of time. In the first 8 months of 2022, the U.S. electrical grid was physically attacked 107 times, according to the U.S. General Accounting Office. And now we have no idea who's been allowed to come freely into our country and what their possible motives are. Another of the most ominous threats to our power grid is the possibility of a nuclear detonation causing an EMP. For those that don't know, an EMP is a burst of electromagnetic radiation that can disrupt or destroy electronic devices and infrastructure, including power grids, communication systems, and even computer networks. If multiple nuclear explosions were to occur over the United States in strategic locations, the resulting EMP could effectively shut down our entire electrical grid, leading to widespread chaos and devastation. Think of those balloons we've seen in the sky over the past year or so. China now has an entire fleet of those balloons. So while naysayers currently state that there is no way a spy balloon could carry that much payload, we have no idea what the Chinese scientists may have come up with technologically in the last few years. All we would see is a brief flash of light. No fallout, no major nuclear radiation incidents. 3 of these bombs launched into our atmosphere and everything would shut down. The aftermath of such an event would be nothing short of apocalyptic. Without electricity, our modern way of life would grind to a halt. Hospitals would be unable to operate, leaving millions without access to medical care. Food distribution systems would collapse, leading to widespread shortages and famine. Transportation networks would be paralyzed, making it difficult for people to evacuate affected areas or access essential services. Communication would break down, exacerbating the sense of isolation and despair. Moreover, the long-term effects of a prolonged power outage would be even more devastating. Government estimates suggest that it could take 18 months or longer to restore power to affected areas, assuming that the necessary infrastructure and resources are available. During this time, millions would struggle to survive without access to basic necessities like food, water, and shelter. Law and order would break down, leading to widespread civil unrest and violence. The literal social fabric of society would unravel, as people are forced to compete for dwindling resources in a desperate bid for survival. But how, in such a short time, does the government really think 90% of the population would perish? In the chaotic aftermath of an EMP event that cripples our power grid, the loss of 90% of humanity would be a grim reality rooted in the collapse of essential services and the breakdown of societal order. In the first days following the event, the lack of electricity would immediately disrupt crucial systems that sustain life, leading to a rapid increase in fatalities. First and foremost, the inability to access clean water would pose a significant threat to public health. Without electricity, water treatment plants would cease to function, leaving millions without access to safe drinking water. According to estimates from emergency response agencies, within the first week of a power grid collapse, a significant portion of the population would succumb to waterborne illnesses like cholera, dysentery, and dehydration. In urban areas where population density is highest, the death toll from waterborne diseases could be particularly devastating. Furthermore, the loss of electricity would have dire consequences for medical care. Hospitals and healthcare facilities rely heavily on electricity to power life-saving equipment like ventilators, dialysis machines, and heart monitors. Without power, these facilities would be unable to provide essential medical services, leading to a surge in preventable deaths. In the critical hours and days following the EMP event, patients with chronic conditions, injuries, or acute illnesses would be left untreated, resulting in a significant increase in mortality rates. The breakdown of law and order in the absence of electricity would compound the challenges facing survivors. With communication networks disrupted and emergency services overwhelmed, law enforcement agencies would struggle to maintain public order and respond to emergencies. In urban areas where population density is highest, looting, violence, and civil unrest would escalate rapidly as desperate individuals vie for dwindling resources. Without the deterrent of law enforcement, criminal elements would seize the opportunity to exploit the chaos, further endangering the lives of innocent civilians. As the days turn into weeks and then months, the death toll would continue to rise as secondary effects of the power grid collapse take their toll. Food shortages would become increasingly severe as distribution networks break down and perishable goods spoil without refrigeration. Malnutrition and starvation would claim the lives of many, particularly vulnerable populations like children, the elderly, and the sick. Moreover, the lack of electricity would hinder transportation and access to essential services, exacerbating the challenges facing survivors. Those living in remote or rural areas would be particularly vulnerable, being cut off from critical resources and assistance. In regions where extreme weather conditions are common, exposure to the elements would pose an additional threat to survival, leading to hypothermia, heat stroke, and other weather-related fatalities. The loss of 90% of humanity in the aftermath of an EMP event is not an exaggeration, but a sobering reality rooted in the interconnectedness of our modern world and the fragility of our infrastructure. Without electricity, the collapse of essential services would lead to a cascade of failures that would make survival virtually impossible for the vast majority of people. Furthermore, the sheer scale of the devastation caused by an EMP event would overwhelm any attempts at mitigation or recovery. With widespread destruction of infrastructure and communication networks, governments would struggle to coordinate any relief efforts and provide assistance to affected populations. The loss of critical infrastructure like hospitals, transportation networks, and communication systems would further hamper rescue and recovery operations, leaving millions to fend for themselves in a world turned upside down. The predictions made by government agencies regarding the potential loss of 90% of humanity in the aftermath of an SHTF event are not to be taken lightly. The fragility of our modern civilization, coupled with the catastrophic effects of events like nuclear EMPs or sabotage of our power grid itself, paints a bleak picture of the challenges facing humanity in the 21st century. As we confront these existential threats, it is imperative that we take proactive measures to strengthen our resilience and preparedness, lest we be caught unprepared in the face of disaster. As always, you know I want to hear your thoughts on this, so please leave me a comment. And check out this video YouTube has chosen for you to watch next based on your own viewing history.